Welcome everyone. I'm Nancy Seligson. I'm the supervisor of the town of Mamaroneck, and I want to thank you all for coming to the 2016 Community Annual Ceremony to remember the terrible events of September 11th, 2001. And I want to thank the representatives of the fire and police departments that are here from the village of Mamaroneck, the village of Larchmont, and the town of Mamaroneck. I want to thank the Mamaroneck EMS for being here, the Larchmont Mamaroneck Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and thank you to the town of Mamaroneck Highway Department. Thank you to the veterans, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the public officials, and all of you. I have to announce the town board members who are here. We have Deputy Supervisor Ernie Odierna, Councilwoman Abby Katz, Councilwoman Jane Elkind-Eny, and Councilman Tom Murphy. It's been 15 years since the attacks on September 11th that shocked and devastated our country and our community. The weather is beautiful today, as it was on that tragic day. This is an opportunity for us to come together as a community and to help us remember that tragedy and to honor the lives that were lost and the bravery that we all saw. I want to take a moment to thank the emergency responders in our communities for their bravery and commitment to protecting all of us then and every day. I hope that this annual ceremony creates a sense of community for us, bringing together all those who remember what happened on that day and how we felt, and to help others relate to the collective sorrow and the solidarity we share. Mostly, I hope it makes us feel better and stronger. We have the color guard today from the American Legion. We want to thank them for being here. We're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and Kevin from the Boy Scouts is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I would like to call on Reverend Bill Crawford, properly Reverend Dr. William P. Crawford, to give the invocation.
Here 15 years later, we remember, with Girl Scouts and so many children among us now who were not even born then. And so we remember and we help to remember that day when tall and shining and strong on that bluest of blue sky brilliant mornings just before the fireball and the dust cloud and the raining debris, the towers tumbled, attacked by evil. God was in free fall, buckling and bearing our humanity, CEOs and cleaning women, firefighters and police, brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers, 3,000 people in death, or one death 3,000 times. We remember firefighters running up and into the tower's inferno, police and first responders, selfless in their care, emergency workers, diligent and devoted. We know there is no prayer to change the past, so we pray to live with memory, with constant love, and promise to combat and overcome evil and cherish goodness and peace. May we be healed, united, empowered to stand firm and strong as people, a community, and as these United States of America, with compassion, liberty, and justice for all. Amen.
Thank you, Bill. We're going to change the arrangement of the remarks because we're lucky to have Representative Elliot Engel here, our congressman, and he's going to speak first.
Well, thank you, Nancy, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's a very, very nice turnout, and why I'm so pleased to represent Mamaroneck Larchmont in the United States Congress. September 11th, 2001 is a day when I think we lost our innocence. I remember just prior to that, in the years prior, going to Europe and seeing people with machine guns and protecting us and all kinds of security, and thinking, gee, we don't have that in the United States, how lucky we are. And in 15 years, things have certainly changed. I can tell you in the Capitol, we used to be able to drive right up to the U.S. Capitol. Now there are a million obstacles along the way. When any one of us boards an airplane or moves around, we're always subjected to searches. Our way of life has ended. And we always know that there are still terrorists out there just rearing their ugly heads, waiting to strike again, to strike at humanity. Nancy said that that was a beautiful day. We all remember that day. And we all remember where we were that day when we first found out what happened. You know, it's like those of you, few of you who may be as old as I, remember when President Kennedy was assassinated. We will never forget where we were that day. And 9/11, of course, is the same type of feeling. But as New Yorkers and as Americans, we're strong, we're resilient, and we vow to fight back. First of all, we have to make sure that each and every first responder and anyone that was at ground zero gets the kind of medical help that they need. We finally passed the bill, and we have to make sure the funds continue to be there. Because it's one thing to give lip service, it's another thing to really mean what you say. And I hope that the Congress, which fights a little too much, can keep coming together like we did to aid the first responders who got sick. But you know what? What happened there was the worst tragedy any of us could ever experience, particularly the families. But it showed the goodness in America. I think people appreciate our first responders, and I want to thank all of you who are here today. People understand that these are selfless people who make our lives safer each and every day. So, as we reflect on that day 15 years ago, let us remember that the fight against terrorism is still there, that the United States, as a leader of the free world, has responsibilities to ourselves, of course, and to the world. And let's try to work together to ensure that terrorism doesn't raise its ugly head, and when it does, it's responded to very, very quickly. The 12 people from Larchmont and Mamaroneck who perished that day will never be forgotten, as will the 3,000 who were killed. And we owe it to their memory to keep on in the kind of society where terrorism is not going to get the best of us. We're going to defeat the scourge of terrorism. And we will always remember those martyred souls who gave their lives so that others could live, and all the people that would be alive today if it wasn't for that terrible terrorist attack. God bless America, and God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Engel. I'd like to invite Lorraine Walsh, the mayor of the village of Larchmont.
To be honest, I've been struggling with what to say on this today on this 15th anniversary of that terrible day. 15 years, it shouldn't be different than 14, yet somehow it is. It makes me wonder both at how quickly time passes and at how raw the pain can still be. 15 years is a milestone that requires both remembrance and a look towards the future of what this day will mean. Of course, for some, this day will always be a day to remember the loved one they lost, the father, the sister, the aunt, the daughter, the husband, the best friend. But as 15 years, what will 9/11 mean for us as a nation? What should it mean? Will it become just another day that we take out our flags, perhaps gather at ceremonies like this one to mourn the fallen, and then go home back to our everyday lives? When I reflect on the days and weeks right after 9/11, I remember how much strength we took from stories of courage, sacrifice, and compassion. The firefighters going up the tower stairs, the co-workers helping each other down the stairs, the passengers on a plane banding together to prevent one more tragedy. I remember the strength we took from our common ideals, and from the common humanity expressed through the solidarity of other nations. However, as the years have passed, we risk forgetting that which united us as fellow Americans and citizens of the world, allowing the many challenges we now face to divide us instead of bring us together. So when we think about what 9/11 means now, what it will mean at 20 years and 25, what it will mean to those who weren't born yet or were too young to understand, let it rekindle our belief in the strength of courage, sacrifice, compassion, common ideals, and common humanity to lift us up and bind us to each other. Let us not have just a day of remembrance or a day of service, for what is one day compared to the many days unlived by those who were sacrificed? On every 9/11, let us renew our pledge to each other as members of a community, both local and at large, to be courageous for each other, compassionate towards each other, and sacrifice for those less fortunate. Whether we go to the food pantry and volunteer to pack groceries for a year, become a mentor to a child who has no one to look up to, or advocate for the dispossessed everywhere, there is no lack of opportunity in this world to find meaningful ways to reach out to others in their hour of need, or find common ground with those who come from different circumstances. As a former teacher, I know that it's only by doing that we truly learn the lesson. Yes, we must remember the lives lost that day, but more importantly, we must celebrate them. We must honor their final deeds with deeds of our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. I'd like to ask Catherine Parker, our county legislator, to come forward.
Thank you, and good evening. As we reflect on the events of 9/11 15 years ago, the word for me today is going to sound like a strange one, but it is gratitude. I'm grateful for the fact that I started my day with church for a little bit of spiritual nourishment. You know, I find this day, like Mayor Walsh, it's a little bit raw on the emotions, a little bit tougher than most every other day that we have to go through during the course of a year. So I was grateful for that. And I'm also so grateful to be here with all of you from Larchmont and Mamaroneck, all of us Westchester residents, all of us proud New Yorkers, proud Americans, and to see that 15 years later, we have not forgotten. We are unified. We're together, and we're here showing that we are stronger for it. We also learned 15 years ago that yes, indeed, there is really evil in this world. Evil that was there to try to take us down, and that we did not run from that evil. We did not run from that terror. We came together, all of us. You know, I want you to think for one moment, I bet each and every one of you, 15 years ago, if you were alive at the time, I bet you all did something for your neighbor, for your family, for your friends, whether it was wanting to go and donate blood that right after the event, or whether it was just to comfort somebody who was really struggling with grasping the reality of the situation. And your prayers. And I include that as something that I think is really very important. I really believe that regardless of what you pray to, who you pray to, the higher power, prayers are so powerful. And to pray for those that lost their lives and their families, to pray for answers, to pray for justice, to pray for help. I think all of us were, in our own way, doing a lot of that 15 years ago. Prayer was how my friend Andy Rayner answered the call to help 15 years ago. If you don't know Andy, let me start by saying she's a woman. And she's also one of my neighbors just up the road in Rye. In 2001, her children were 6 and 8, her husband a school teacher, and she herself was an ordained minister, still is. 15 years ago, she had chosen to be a hospice minister, and I find that really a sign of her strength, because I think it takes a very extraordinary person who can spend the last few days of somebody's life with them, to try to comfort them as they go on for their eternal journey. But right after 9/11, within the first 2 weeks, Andy heard a new calling, and she became one of the ministers for the morgue down at Ground Zero. She would go in every day for the next 6 months, from midnight to 8 in the morning, to pray over the dead, because she felt very strongly that all those people needed that respect, that love, prayers, the blessing to transition on to the next life. What's very extraordinary, in a way, is actually how ordinary that story is. Because probably that name, Andy Rayner, wasn't familiar to all of you, but she was a person that heard a calling and answered it, just as I think many, many other people did as well. There were thousands and thousands of people in their own way that answered a calling, that tried to help, that tried to lend some comfort. And that is the prayer that I believe that was answered, that I am so grateful for. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Mayor Rosenblum from the village of Mamaroneck was not able to be here today. He sent his regrets, and Assemblyman Steve Otis from Rye and also Albany was not able to be here either, because sometimes public officials actually realize they can't be in two places at one time. And so I know that Senator George Latimer is on his way, because he does believe you can be everywhere at the same time. So we will certainly be happy to welcome him when he arrives and ask him to make a few remarks. But right now, we have the reading of the names of those who lost their lives from our community. And we have two brave Boy Scouts who are going to read those names for us. Three. James and Simon.
In memory of those in our community who lost their lives in the tragedy of September 11, 2001. Helen Belilovsky, J. Howard Bolton Jr., Douglas G. Karpaloff, Morris P. Kelly, Helen Crossan Kittle, Patricia Helen Kittle,
Frank J. Kestner, Edward H. Luckett, John T. McErlane Jr., Christopher T. Orgo-Levitz, John A. Rayo, John F. Swain.
Thank you, James and Simon. And thank you to Steph Chin for gracing us with his beautiful taps. We're now going to have the placing of the wreaths. And I'd like to call up the Girl Scouts first. Thank you. Next, the town of Mamaroneck. We're having a perfect example of why we appreciate our first responders and our emergency personnel. No matter what, they are on call. The village of Mamaroneck, please. And the American Legion. Thank you to the Girl Scouts, the Village of Mamaroneck, the Village of Larchmont, the Town of Mamaroneck, and the American Legion for donating these beautiful wreaths. We appreciate it. Now I would like to call up the Girl Scouts, and we're going to sing God Bless America. As promised, Senator George Latimer is here, and so we're going to welcome him to say a few remarks.
This being 62, man, I'm a little out of breath, but I'm sure I'll speak. This has been a very somber day for all of us, and if there's anything heartening about ceremonies like this, is that they're happening everywhere. And I have a district big enough to be able to say that in Eastchester and in White Plains and in Yonkers, exactly at the same time in Rye and in other places, there are people just like the group that we have here that come together on what is an otherwise beautiful day, just as 9/11 was 15 years ago, a beautiful day for the sake of remembrance. The American experience is that we set aside days for purposes. We set aside a day for Thanksgiving. We set aside a day for a New Year. We celebrate a religious holiday like Christmas. Societally, we set aside a day for veterans. where we say to anyone who has served their nation in the uniform of their country that this is a day to remember your sacrifice as a veteran. Separate from that, we have a Memorial Day. Sometimes we're not always clear about how they differ, but Memorial Day we set aside to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice, who not only served their country in the uniform but died. This day is a different day, and there are elements that remind you of other ceremonial days, but it's different in this regard. The people that died this day were first responders who in the normal course of their job are ready to risk their lives for others, but normally don't see themselves in that type of a combat role. And as those firefighters and those policemen went up the tower that day, you've heard the song, as I have, Bruce Springsteen, The Rising. As they rose up the tower that day, they were doing what they were trained to do, but they were facing almost sure death. How many amongst us can do that, no matter what our training is? And we're also remembering today the fact that this attack killed civilians. It killed secretaries. It killed salesmen. It killed maintenance men. It killed food service workers. It killed bond traders. People who got on that train and went into Grand Central, went downstairs to the 6th train, and it was a beautiful day. I worked in the area, and walked over from Brooklyn Bridge on a lovely day, the Brooklyn Bridge subway station. And they went into their office for their day of work. And now they're a part of a plaque. They're a part of a remembrance. We remember their spouses. We see their children grow up around us. And in fact, just like my father and mother telling me about Pearl Harbor, which was real to them, but was only something I heard about, now we have a generation of young people, the Girl Scouts amongst us and others, even up to 9th grade and high school, that don't have a direct remembrance of what happened that day. So just like the American Legion and the VFW try to maintain that sense of American tradition and reminds us that we have to think about these things, and the tradition that's seen in our police services and our fire services, so there's a tradition as well, so that the people that we remember this day are not in fact dead, that they live with us. Because when a civilian dies unexpectedly, it attaches itself to us. For those of us who are not trained the way the men of the police department are trained, or the way the men of the fire department are trained. I was trained to be a salesman. I was trained to book contractual business. And guys like me were on the 101st floor, the 93rd floor of the tower, and looked for a means of escape and found there was none. And their choice was to jump out of a window a quarter of a mile below, or die with the fire and the asphyxiation. And because we had cell phones, we had time enough to call somebody we loved, to say goodbye. An incredible conversation, nothing we ever want to ever have to do ourselves. Our members of the cloth, those of us who are Christian, we pray in the Lord's Prayer, deliver us from evil. When I hear that, that's what I think. Don't put me, Lord, in a position like that, where I'm going to have to decide. These people that died this day, that was the choice that they had. And the ones that were on the airplane, Flight 93, that downed in Shanksville, and the ones that were on the airplanes that hit the towers and hit the Pentagon, these were men just like I experienced. I got on a plane for business purposes. I had to go to the West Coast, and I'm on a jet leaving Kennedy, and there's some commotion and something's happening, and the next thing I know, I'm looking across the aisle to somebody I don't know, and he's saying to me, let's roll. I'm a salesman, I'm a marketing executive. What do I know about terrorists with weapons? That's what today's about. And that's why this day is different. And that's why this day is somber. Because it could have been us. It could have been us. It wasn't. But the people that died on this day that we remember here in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, these were people who walked on Palmer Avenue. These were people that shopped on Mamaroneck Avenue. These were people, if you knew them, that you'd see dining out on Larchmont Avenue or Chatsworth Avenue. These were people that went to our house of worship with us. These children, their children played with our children. They were our neighbors. That's a different remembrance. That's why it's solemn, and that's why this community, this combination of communities, will be credited. And the men and women who are here to put on their uniforms on a Sunday afternoon Every guy in the world knows there's NFL football going on right now, right? But they're here today, as are you, because this day is a day that we can never forget.
Thank you, George. He was worth waiting for. I'd like to ask Rabbi Jeff Serkman to join us for a benediction now. Thank you.
You've heard it, 15 years later. What can it mean to remember? On July 2nd, just a few months ago, the master of memory, my teacher from Boston University, the preeminent survivor, Nobel Prize-winning author Elie Wiesel, passed away. No matter the specific course that Professor Wiesel was teaching, he taught the same essential lesson. We are here to bear witness. For us, today, to never forget the 2,996 taken by the hands of terror on 9/11, to be sure. But memory must mean more. Wiesel's own words, a life lesson for today and every day, empower the purpose of our remembrance. He wrote, "The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of sacred is not profane, it's indifference. The opposite of life is not death, it's indifference." In tribute to every life lost and grief-stricken families left behind, in honor of every first responder and to a heartbroken nation whose spirit was still steadfast still, let us not remain indifferent. When inhumanity threatens the basic rights of any human being, let us not remain indifferent. When our democracy is diminished by the intolerance of the few, let us not remain indifferent. When difference, color or creed, family or faith blinds some to the dignity all of us must share, let us not remain indifferent. On this 15th commemoration of 9/11, may we transcend the loss we still feel through our love and defeat terror by bearing witness to liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Thank you all for joining us today. I have to give a special shout out to the Town of Mamaroneck Highway Department again, because they are the ones who work so hard to make this park as beautiful as it is for us. And I want to thank my assistant Sue Odierna for helping put this together and working so hard. Thank you to all the participants. We really appreciate it. I think every person here appreciates the other people here, and seeing all those dressed in uniform and coming together as a community. It really makes it a special event for all of us, and I hope that you found it helpful. For me, it instills a new or deeper appreciation for the community. And I feel very proud to be able to work with all of you. So thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of summer.
Hi, I'm Bob Miglio. I'm the president and founder of Friends Indeed with my friends. We're actually standing here in front of this living garden that was put together and created by an organization called Friends Indeed, or FIND. And FIND was put together by just a group of us in the community right after the tragic events of 9/11 in 2001. Here by Memorial Park, which is very fitting, it was put together to become like an outreach program and an outreach community event to help the families here in Larchmont and Mamaroneck that lost loved ones on that day. We organized this grassroots organization to raise money and reach out to the community to bond as basically one. I think everyone needed they needed an outlet, and we were fortunate enough to be able to provide that for the community, an outlet so that they can reach out to their friends and their neighbors, and just to show them that we cared and that we were one community. We raised money to help the children here in town who had lost parents. We set up 529 plans, college plans. They're all since have gone on to college and almost out of school here in year 15. I think the youngest is now 16 years old, one of the youngest children. We actually did this in here where we had community walks, we had charity hockey games. We basically had a number of events that continue to bring the community together and to reach out to not just the community but the families. In 2003, which would be the third year after we had this event here, is we dedicated this garden with this plaque, you know, to our friends lost but never forgotten. As this garden grows, so may their spirit. And the logo is basically it represents what we call friends indeed. You know, a friend in need is a friend indeed. It's someone comforting someone else, and in the shadows, from them the shadows of the towers emerges. And you know, we've been fortunate to be part of this community that cares enough to continue to remember and support the families spiritually and emotionally. And you know, I feel very blessed to have been part of something as great as Find was, and to really start this, you know, start this thing off and let it continue to basically grow and be remembered by the wonderful work of the town of Mamaroneck and the village of Larchmont, and the village of Mamaroneck, who now continue to carry the torch, you know, with the events every year. But in year one, when everyone needed a shoulder to cry on and a purpose, Friends Indeed was born, and still lives in our hearts today.